If I had to start my business over in 2026, this is what I would do differently. Now, to give you a little context, I started medical billing in a full-time job in 2006. I also helped a lot of providers on the side, kind of like a hobby, for many, many years before I actually opened my medical billing business. However, when I started it, even after helping providers, being in it for several years, at that point over 10 years, I still would change many things if I started my business over in 2026. So I'm going to jump into those things that I would change, and hopefully they would help you as well. Now, they're not in any type of order. I'm just going to let you know what I think. So the first thing I probably would have changed is my mindset, my business mindset. And that would be including me talking to business owners, like-minded business owners, preferably business owners who are in the service industry or who are actual medical billing business owners. It has only been for maybe the past year or so, maybe a little bit more, that I have actually spoken to medical billing business owners that actually are doing the same thing I am. So being in a service-based business or a product-based business, business can be business, but again, when you are talking to individuals who are in the same field as you, they also know what I have to deal with when it comes to providers, when it comes to insurance payers, when it comes to the staff of the practice. They know what I have to deal with. So the closer I am to people that are actually doing the same thing I am, it would have helped me quicker. So I was in an employee mindset. Regardless of how long I was billing for more than one provider outside of my full-time job, I still had the employee mindset and I was not thinking like a business owner. So if you're planning to start your medical billing business in 2026, that should be one of the first things that you think about when you decide you want to start. The second thing I would do is to niche down sooner. Now, I'm pretty sure you know what niching is, but it's basically like who you're targeting. And as far as medical billing is concerned, you can niche down through the specialty. So you may decide you want to only bill for therapy or cardiology. My current niche is OBGYN and therapy. However, that doesn't mean that other types of doctors don't reach out to me. And that doesn't mean that I won't take them, but I am pretty set with the type of specialty that I want to bill for. You can also niche down by services. So you may decide that you will only deal with AR, or you may only deal with eligibility and verification and pre-authorizations. Or you may only deal with credentialing, or you may deal with credentialing and AR. So you can niche down that way. You can also niche down by the type of provider that you are going to bill for, as far as private practice or outpatient facilities or the hospital. When it comes to me, I am a medical biller for private practices. I don't bill for outpatient facilities. I don't bill for hospitals. So I know who I'm speaking to when it comes to my marketing, my advertising, and if you are trying to market to people, you can't just say that you bill for everybody. When you niche down, you start to become an expert in that area. You become more efficient and more effective. When you're billing for all types of providers and specialties and services, not to say that you're not going to do a good job, but it will become harder for you to become an expert or become advanced in that particular area. You can also niche down in software because there are so many softwares out there. They pretty much do the same thing, but you have to learn each and every software if you decide that you're going to deal with each and every software. But if you decide to niche down in a particular software, in your advertising, in your marketing, you can talk about being advanced and being an expert in that particular software. So niching down help you attract those providers that you need. Now, the third thing that I would have changed is creating SOPs. I would have created SOPs way earlier or way sooner than I have. A SOP is a standard operating procedure. And this is basically like a list of instructions or tasks that you have to do for a particular duty. So for instance, if you're onboarding a provider, you have a SOP written down that can help you make sure that you don't miss anything. So if you onboard that provider by sending them the agreement, the BAA, a provider form, and then you send them an invoice, and then after the invoice, you make sure that they sign. Basically, it's steps that you take every time you do this particular task. I would have done this way sooner because I wouldn't have to recreate the wheel every single time. I would also be able to pass this duty along to someone else if I decided to hire specifically for onboarding, or, if I started to hire people for my business. I also would not have to recreate the wheel for myself, because I remember doing this task, onboarding a provider, over and over and over again. And each time I did it differently. Sometimes I missed sending them the invoice. Sometimes I missed, filling out a form. Something happened because I didn't have the SOPs prepared and ready when I needed them. So for you, I would say to, even if it's your first provider, make sure you write down your steps that you take when you do certain tasks and procedures, even if it's just you and your business, because you will be able to use it later on. It will save you time, even if it's just you in the business, and it will save your employees or your contractors time as well, and make sure that it's done the right way each and every time. Also remember with SOPs that you can build on them, you can change them. You just have to make sure that you update them continuously. But also remember that you need to create them from the beginning, even if it's just you. The fourth thing I would have done is to invest in myself earlier. Now, if you are interested in starting a medical billing business, everything is not going to be free and everything shouldn't be a DIY. I am a DIY person. I always feel like I can do something myself. Now, I'm not saying that you or me are incapable of doing something ourselves, but sometimes we need to invest in ourselves by investing in someone who is considered more advanced or an expert, quote unquote, in what we're trying to do. So for example, if I'm trying to cut my grass, I don't know anything about cutting grass at this point. That doesn't mean that I can't learn, right? I can learn how to cut my grass. But the difference between me cutting the grass and me hiring someone to cut the grass can be several factors. I needed to determine whether or not I'm willing to put in the time, probably even the money, because now I have to buy a lawnmower to cut the grass. I have to buy shades for myself to put on my eyes. I have to buy several other things to first be able to cut it. And then it takes my time, because now I have to figure out how long it's going to take me. I might think it's going to take an hour, but it takes 3-4 hours because the lawnmower keeps shutting off. You see where I'm going with this? But if I hire someone who already knows what they're doing, someone who has been doing it for a while, I could then be doing something else that I know how to do, and that will make me money to pay this person and probably not spend as much money or as much time on it. So sometimes you have to invest in yourself. If I thought about it, I would have invested in myself earlier, maybe got me a mentor, maybe with tools, different tools that I use. A lot of the things that I did by hand, manually, because I didn't want to, or I felt like I didn't have enough money to invest in certain tools. But if I had invested in these tools earlier or in this mentor earlier, then I would have probably been able to grow faster, not waste so much time. I would have been able to do things more efficiently and effectively if I had decided to invest in myself. So sometimes you have to invest in yourself, whether that is with money or with time, to move faster for what you want to do. The fifth thing that I would do if I was starting my business over in 2026 would be to write things down in one book, or even if it's more than one book, but just use up the whole book and write down everything so that I would know where it is at. I am an advocate of writing things down. Yes, I type on the computer. I use the computer often. I might save different documents. But for the most part, I like to write things down because I kind of feel like it helps me to remember things, and, I just connect with it better. However, I write things down, or I used to write things down in all types of books. All types of books, stickies, envelopes, whatever I had in front of me is what I used. And if I had written things down in one area, one book, something that I could come back to and know that it is specifically there, it would have put me on the right track. And so this is where this book comes into place, or a book similar to this, because it's a book that I know is specifically for medical billing and my medical billing business. Whether that includes when I go to webinars, or when I, go to seminars, or when I watch YouTube videos, because just like you, I watch medical billing YouTube videos. I listen to, podcasts. I read books about medical billing, and all of these things, I take notes. Instead of having these notes every and anywhere, when I want to go and look for them, then I can't find them. Having them in one place for me is very important. And so I started to make sure that I write things in one book so that I can know where to look back for them instead of them being all over the place and I can't remember where they are. So I kind of feel like I'm just losing out after going to this seminar, spending all of this money, and then not being able to find the notes that I took. It's kind of frustrating. So if I had to recommend anything, even if it's not the book that I have in my shop, I would recommend that you have a book that you write everything in, especially if you're starting your medical billing business. You want to have in that book your goals, how much you want to price, how you came up with that pricing, the specialties, what you want to include in your contract. It would just be all in one book so that you can then use it to build and start that medical billing business. The sixth thing that I would do is to make sure that I have routines and habits put in place. For me, this helps me stay consistent and stay at peace. At the beginning of my medical billing business journey, I remember being all over the place. I like things in order. I like things neat. I like things organized so that my brain can be organized. Routines and habits make sure that I am on track and up to date with things that I need to do without really needing to think about it. When I don't have routines and habits in place, I am all over the place. Sometimes I may remember to do a report this month, then next month I might not remember to do it. But if I have it in place where my routine is to print reports on the last Friday of each month, then I know automatically without thinking about it, that is the routine. If my routine throughout the week is to make sure that I send out claims for this particular provider on this day or on these days, then I don't even have to think about it. If it's a Wednesday, I know I'm doing this. If it's a Friday, I know I'm doing that. And this helps a lot with decision fatigue. And decision fatigue is a real thing. When I first heard about it, I was saying, what kind of word are they coming up with again? We're always coming up with words and things and, syndromes and all types of stuff. But decision fatigue is a real thing. And when you have things in place through your habits and through your routines, then you don't have to continuously think about them over and over again, but you get them done. And you notice that because you have these routines and these habits in place, that you are up on your game, you are consistent, and you are being effective in your work and what you're supposed to do. The seventh thing that I would have done is I would have celebrated my wins more. When you celebrate your wins, it helps build your confidence and it helps you stop comparing yourselves to others. At least it did for me. Earlier out, again, I didn't celebrate my wins. And so I actually didn't know what I actually achieved. And I always felt like I was behind or that I wanted this goal to happen or that goal to happen. And I actually was getting them done, but because I wasn't celebrating my wins, I didn't realize it. It was just always on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And I still had this feeling of I'm not getting anything accomplished. It probably sounds crazy. And as I'm saying it out loud and I think about it, it was crazy. But that's what I used to do because I didn't celebrate my wins. It's important that if you're starting a business in 2026, that if you decide that you're going to go and get your business license and you get it, then celebrate that. And it doesn't mean that you have to spend all this money to celebrate. You can just say, if I get my business license in the next 2 weeks, then I'm going to celebrate by making my favorite food. Or I'm going to celebrate by taking a nice soak in the tub. Something that you really like, but also something that will help you remember this milestone in your life. So I would recommend celebrating your wins, even if it's small ones, quote unquote, because big or small, it can build your confidence and it can help you see that you are actually achieving your goals. The eighth thing that I would do is I would talk more about my business. Now, I am not a salesperson. I have never been. I used to work at Foot Action, if you remember that. And I was a cashier and a salesperson, and I did not do a very good job because I just don't like to sell. But when it comes to having a medical billing business, you need to let people know about your business. In order for them to refer people to you, to sign up, you have to talk about it. For a long time, I never talked about my business. And that was probably because I didn't really see myself as a business, but also because I didn't want to be salesy. And you don't have to be salesy. The only thing is that you have to let people know that you're there. If they don't know that you're there, you can't get a client. If they don't know that you're there, you will never be able to see if having a medical billing business is for you. Now, you might say, I don't know any providers to talk to, or I don't know anybody who knows providers. You don't know who knows who. Now, in my remote one-on-ones, I ask them, who do you know that's a provider or might know providers? And the first thing they say is, I don't know anybody. But that's not true. You know people. in general. You have family, you have friends, you have coworkers, you have strangers that you talk to in the drugstore. You have many people that you know, and you don't know who they know. So if you're talking to a stranger at the store, and this might just be someone who looks ordinary to you, or you don't think they know anybody, and their father might be a doctor, or their mother's husband might be a doctor. You just never know who you're speaking to. So always, always, always talk about your business. And you don't have to talk about it as if you're trying to sell them, but you can just bring it up casually in the conversation. So if you're going to an event and it's for your business, you can say, yeah, well, this evening I'm going to this particular event for my business. They will ask the question of, what type of business do you have? Or if you're in the drugstore and someone's talking about their insurance, give them some help, give them some advice. And they might say, oh, wow, thank you. How do you know this, or something? And you might say, oh, well, I have a medical billing business and I have to deal with this all the time. You just need to be able to talk casually to people to help them out while you're talking to them. You don't have to sell to them. If they want your services, they will ask for your services. If they know someone who they think can use your services, they will tell that person about you. By starting this medical billing business, you are in the business of helping providers. And so that's what you're doing. You don't have to look at it as if you're trying to sell them something all the time. You are helping them out. It's not just a one-way street. The ninth thing that I would have done was define success for myself. For a very, very long time, I could not define success for myself. The only thing that I knew was that it didn't feel right to me. Throughout these years of doing medical billing, I realized that I didn't want a huge, big medical billing business. I didn't want employees. I didn't want to take on everybody. And for a long time, I felt a way about that. I felt like something was wrong with me. Maybe I didn't need this medical billing business. What was going on? Because others was telling me what I should want. I should want to make $1 million in my business. I should want to have employees. I should want to take on any and every provider that came to me. But that is not what I want. That is not what I wanted. But it's only when I sat down and decided to define success for myself was when I realized that I don't want to take on every provider. There are types of providers that I like working with, and there are other providers that I don't like working with. I started my medical billing business because I wanted to help providers with their billing. And I didn't want stress about doing it. I love doing billing, but I didn't want to be stressed out with all the things that can come with it when you decide to take on a lot of providers, when you decide to take on any provider that comes to you. I didn't want that. And success for me looks drastically different than it is to others. Many other medical billing business owners want to become as big as they possibly can. But that is not my goal. I feel like I can be satisfied with a certain amount of providers, and I don't have to get more and more and more. It doesn't always have to be more, more, more. So when I finally decided my why and my definition of success, I started to excel even faster. And the 10th thing that I would have done was to start sooner. Now, don't get me wrong. After going through all of these things for all of these years, I think it has been what has brought me to this point, definitely. But if I knew then what I know now, I would have started much sooner because I let fear keep me back for a really long time. I kept my medical billing business as a hobby or part-time for a really long time because I was afraid of certain things, and I let that fear hold me back. I also was one who consumed a lot of information. Throughout these years, I just wasn't billing. I was actually consuming a lot of information. I consumed them through certifications, through videos, through webinars, through just learning all that I can learn. But I wasn't executing what I was learning. I was just consuming to the point where it started to get overwhelming because there was so many things that I had learned, but I never really did it to see if it actually worked. So if I had started sooner, I think I would have maybe been on the right path sooner and been at this point where I know the direction that I want to go in and I'm not listening to outside influences. So if you have decided to start your medical billing business in 2026, take some of these tips to help you excel and succeed in having that medical billing business that you have always wanted. I'll see you again in my next video.